introduced the science of Bhakti Yoga to the whole world. So I'll start with that. If you know, then you can sing in response. And maybe it's in the songbook. I see bead bags and tilak and stuff, so maybe some of you are pretty familiar with that. Sorry, I'm looking for a tune. I think I had an idea of what I was going to sing with the harmonium, but I might not do that. I might do something less ambitious. I'll do something less ambitious. I'll sing Srila Prabhupada's, what we think of sometimes as Srila Prabhupada's standard tune, is kind of his fallback. Namahom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yogaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. throwing out my script. I had an idea before, and I just got a different idea of what to talk about. So now that there's a harmonium, I thought I'll talk a little bit. We'll have a little discussion, any questions or anything that you all would like to share, and maybe a little more kirtan afterwards. Kirtan's the real thing anyway, right? Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Bhangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Since we're meeting in a yoga studio, I thought maybe talking about yoga would be appropriate, but I think I'll talk about bhakti. And I want to start with something my beloved spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta wrote, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wrote many years ago. 65 years or more ago. This is from his preface to his presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is kind of the core text for Bhakti Yoga. And although it was written in the late 1950s, probably before almost all of you were born, I'm not going to ask, but I'm assuming y'all look really young to me. I'm an old guy, kind of closing in hard on 80 now. Well, a couple of years away. But this is something that I always find always relevant, still relevant, every bit as relevant now as it was 65 years ago when Srila Prabhupada wrote it. And I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs from this preface. Srila Prabhupada writes, "We must know the present need of human society." And what is that need? Human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. Bear in mind, Srila Prabhupada wrote this in 65 years ago. This is a very broad vision of how to bring a spiritual revival to a dark world, actually. I remember thinking back then, the world was a little dark. I was born just after the Second World War, just a couple of years after it ended. My father had served in the Navy during the war as a photographer, and after the war, one of his duty assignments before he got out of the Navy, before I was born, was photographing the first 2 nuclear tests, A-bomb tests after World War II. at Bikini Atoll in July of 1946. And one of the things that came out of that for public consumption, well, at least for the consumption of those who participated in it, was something like a yearbook. It was, as I remember, it was bound like a yearbook, and the pages were glossy pages because there were a lot of photographs of the two explosions. This was called Operation Crossroads. And they actually planned 3 tests. And the second test was declared by the Atomic Energy Commission to be the world's first nuclear disaster. Because the second test was an underwater detonation. And the entire area of Bikini Atoll, the lagoon and all the little islands that make up the atoll, were showered with radioactive water and radioactive seawater. And so this sort of yearbook, this account of these 2 A-bomb tests. So they canceled the 3rd test because the second test was just a little very worrisome. And when I remember reading, when I first read that the second test was declared as the world's first nuclear disaster, I thought, wait, what about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Seemed pretty much like disasters to me. Ask anyone who survived them. But that aside, I grew up with this record of these 2 A-bomb tests in my home. And it was just something that I would look at every once in a while. It was a big part of Dad's life. And well, maybe it was part of Dad's life anyways, part of his military service. So it seemed like something that was important. Plus, we had bomb drills all through school when I was a kid. I think we called them duck and cover. So when we would have air raid drills, we would, in school, we would close the blinds and we would get under our desks. And somehow that was supposed to protect us from a nuclear attack. Really absurd when you think of it. I think they closed the blinds to diminish shattered glass flying across the room. But the force of a nuclear explosion is so great that it just seems silly that Venetian blinds would stop that. And then when I was in high school, I think when I was 15, when I was in the 10th grade, it was 1960, October of 1962, we had what's become known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. And historians have documented the fact that we were probably somewhere between 15 and 17 minutes away from an all-out nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States. And at that time, I happened to live in the Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia. And if there was an all-out nuclear war, there was no chance that I would make it to 16, or any of us. So the world seemed dark then. Plus there was rock and roll, which I think our parents thought was, some kind of threat to humanity. Gangs, juvenile delinquents, kids joining gangs and getting into trouble, getting into fights and stuff. And but there was always looming over us this threat of nuclear war. So that seemed like a very dark time. And if we compare that to now, that threat of all-out nuclear war is still there. And that, what do they call it? The doomsday clock? Where is it set now?
5 seconds mark.
A minute and a half. It's set at 11:58 and a half, 11:58 and 30 seconds, a minute and a half away from total destruction, not to mention the climate problems. Some people would like to dismiss this, oh, there's no such thing as climate change or whatever. Ask my friends who lived in or around Lahaina, Maui, 2.5 years ago. Or people who live in the Pacific Palisades and surrounding areas in Los Angeles just, what, 4 months ago? It was in November, wasn't it? Oh, January, geez. Horrible, just horrible to come. Oh, that's right, it was after I visited in the fall, late fall. Horrible, unimaginable firestorm, like Tokyo when it was bombed in, what was it, 1944, 45, or Dresden, Germany, when it was bombed by the Allied forces in 1944, created terrible firestorms. It just kind of like fed itself, just sucked, created such powerful winds because it drew the air, the surrounding air in. So, and then we have the politics, which are weirder than ever, depending on, doesn't matter what side you're on, right? Doesn't matter which flag you wave, which color you identify with or whatever. The politics are just plain weird, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Very weird. So I find this Srila Prabhupada's sentiments that he's expressing here quite prescient. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are more or less on the oneness of, based more or less on the oneness of human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with the aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmadyasya yata, to establish the ideal of a common cause. Human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the field of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But, it's always a but, right? But there's a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large. And therefore, there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There is a need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, for it. It is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. So these are very big assertions. But if we understand the teachings that are presented by the Srimad Bhagavatam, it begins Janmad Yasya Yata, which is something we find at the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra as well, Janmad Yasya Yata, that everything comes from one source. And we can call that source variously. There's the absolute truth, or the supreme, or God. But Srimad Bhagavatam presents that source as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the solution to all our problems, there's another passage that I always like to share whenever I have an excuse. Without too much trouble. Oops, too far. I'm an old English teacher, and I'm really good at navigating, I guess you might call them analog texts, analog books, paper books, because I've been doing that for 75 years or more. But digital ones still a challenge for me. Maybe I'll get a little bit better before my time expires. We're almost there. This is a passage from Srila Prabhupada's commentary. Oops, too far back. On the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that second verse, part of that second verse, explains the natural audience for this particular piece of literature. And that is people who are pure in heart. And if we wonder how it is they're pure in heart, it explains that as well, because they're nirmatsarana. They're completely free from envy. And if we wonder how it is that they might be completely free from envy, it's because they don't have a personal agenda. They've completely given up. They've seen the futility of all the endeavors that we might make in the material world. Because if we're honest, this is not a morbid thought or a cynical thought, I don't think. If we're honest, whatever it is we aspire for, whatever it is we strive for, if we attain it, and we don't always attain the goals that we have, right? One of my dad's goals for me was that I would attend, well, at one point he had wanted to get me interested in Stanford University. I remember he and Mom brought me up to the Bay Area, to Palo Alto, on a business trip. This was in the late 50s, probably. I was probably 10 or about to turn 11 years old. And part of the trip included a tour of Stanford University because he wanted to get me excited about that. Another aspiration, higher education aspiration, was the US Naval Academy. You get a first-class education and you don't have to pay for it. Oh, not only that, you get paid for it. You get paid while you're attending the Naval Academy. And then you spend a few years as a naval officer. And he thought that I might someday go on to be an astrophysicist or a rocket scientist or something like that. Dad was big on space. Those goals were never, that was never even, by the time I was 15 or 16, I had decided there was no way I was going to the Naval Academy. That discipline wasn't for me. And his kind of fallback position that I would become an attorney, that's something that was never realized either. And the goals that I had, that I had for myself, weren't all really attained. Even those that I actually took the trouble to try to pursue. So if we're honest, even if we do attain those goals, the results we get are going to be temporary. And if nothing else, ultimately, death will take away all the things that we've gained in this world, right? In the New Testament, Jesus Christ says, don't lay your treasure here in this world, because whatever you have in this world will be corrupted and destroyed. But instead, you should lay your treasure in the kingdom of God. So the Srimad Bhagavatam suggests the same thing. So those who've actually kind of seen through the veneer of the material world, the illusion that's created by God's external energy, Krishna's external energy, they don't have an agenda for themselves. they actually become selfless, as we'll see in this one paragraph in this purport of Srila Prabhupada's. He says, in the material world, there's keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community. Sound familiar? I was remembering last night that when I was in graduate school, I got a master's degree in English from San Diego State University. So it's a state university. It's not like MIT or Harvard or University of Chicago or Stanford. And a little laid back. San Diego is a beach town. The university is not very close to the beach, but still San Diegans are kind of beach town people or mountain town people. So a little laid back. And I remember there were these two women in one of the graduate seminars I was taking who were like, we were looking for collaborative ways to approach some of the projects in our, that we were working on in that seminar. And they were saying, wait, this is graduate school. We've got to be more competitive. And everyone else in the seminar, 15 of us, we all looked at them like, where do you think you are? This is a master's program at San Diego State. It's not a PhD program at Chicago or Harvard or something. So that competition is just part of our, seems to be part of our, especially American culture. And of course, we've managed to spread that everywhere else. He says, but the devotees of the Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with the materialists because they're on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Such transcendentalists are not envious and pure in heart. In the material world, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there's competition. But, and this sentence changed my life. I was what you might call bhakti curious when the first time I read this sentence. I was convinced that bhakti yoga was a very cool thing, that chanting Hare Krishna was a wonderful spiritual practice. And that conviction came out of my experience chanting with the devotees and studying Srimad Bhagavad Gita. But when I read this sentence, it all changed. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but are well-wishers to everyone. And they strive to create a competition-less society with God at the center. And when I read that sentence, I thought, this is absolutely revolutionary. This is the revolution. I read this probably late 1969, and I was thinking, this is the revolution we've all been looking for. So sign me up. And that's when whatever aspirations I had, I had just recently gotten out of the Navy. I was taking some time to sort of find myself, which included a lot of surfing. Trying to, I guess, find myself in the ocean. Surfing was actually a relief from everything else. Because once you get out in the ocean, you have to be completely aware of what's going on around you. And especially when you take off on a wave, you find yourself in a flow state. You can't, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi from the University of Chicago proposed this idea of flow states where you've got to, this is something that you enjoy, but you do it in a way that it's challenging enough that it's kind of just beyond what's easy for you. So it's like music, playing music, or dancing, or athletics, mountain climbing, rock climbing. Rock climbing is a flow state. You cannot be thinking of anything else. Anyone here seen Alex Honnold's film, Free Solo, about the first person to climb the entire face of El Capitan in Yosemite without any ropes. And he did it, oh gosh, so much faster than everybody else climbs the face of El Capitan. He did it in a little over 4 hours, where most people who attempt that climb, it'll take them a couple, 3 days. I mean, they take all kinds of gear up. They sleep up there. And Honnold he was just like climbing past all of them, like a bug going up a rock. And I've sometimes thought rock climbing requires that same kind of focus that a bug has to have. There can't be anything else happening in your mind while you're doing it. So surfing kind of gave me that sort of relief, especially when I took off on a wave. I had to be completely tuned into what was going on underneath my feet, just behind me and just in front of me. Oh, and below the water, I had to watch out for coral reefs as well. So I was I was kind of in this sort of liminal space in my life where I had not yet gone back to school, but I was thinking I was about to. But when I read this, I thought, this is what I'm going to do now. And I want to commit my life to this revolution. Now, Bhakti Yoga is actually a user-friendly process because it's something that we actually ultimately cannot fail at. All the other processes that are described in the Vedic literatures, the process of karma, kanda, where we engage in ritualistic activities and work along with working hard in order to gain some kind of material progress. You have to do it perfectly in order to attain the real result. And ultimately, if you do it right, if you do it perfectly for 100 lives in a row, you can get the post of Brahma, the kind of creator and overseer of a particular universe. But that doesn't last. Even if you get that, it doesn't last. Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita that even if we attain Svarga, even if we attain heaven, when our punya runs out, then Chine punya martyaloka vishanti. We have to come back down to a dump like this place, this martyaloka, place of death. And then there's yoga. Yoga we have to do perfectly as well in order to attain the real result, which is calming our minds and senses enough that we can actually get darshan of the Paramatma, the super soul, the indwelling aspect of the Supreme Lord that guides each and every one of us through our lives. And then there's the process of jnana, where we can attain, we strive to attain moksha. But that also has to be done perfectly in order to get the result. And it requires a life of celibacy. There's no room in it for family life. But Bhakti Yoga is actually user-friendly. It's perfect for family life. And there's not necessarily a rush. There may be some sense of urgency once we realize just how problematic life in the material world is. But we know, we're assured by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and we're assured throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, that we will attain success, ultimately, sooner or later. There's no chance of not attaining success. Bhakti is that powerful. And even if we make mistakes along the way, not a problem. If we don't finish in this lifetime, not a problem. We pick up in our next lifetime where we left off. And ultimately, we will attain that success. And that leaves us open for what Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, referred to as the peace formula. which is given in the verse at the end, the last verse of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Bhuktaram yogya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhuktaram gyatmam shanti rakshati. Says, people who have this kind of vision, that Bhuktaram yogya tapasam, that I am the real beneficiary of everything that you do. Any austerities that you perform, any yogyas you perform, any kinds of sacrifices that you make in your life, ultimately those things are meant, excuse me, not meant for me. Sarva Loka Maheshwara. I'm the supreme controller. I'm the supreme Lord of all the worlds, all the universes. Okay, so we might be thinking, oh gosh, what does that leave for me? And he says, Suhradam Sarvabhuta. I am the dearmost friend of every being, of every living entity. Okay, that's nice. Now, and he says, not just friend, the dearmost friend, the closest friend, Suhradam. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada would explain that you can see 3 broad classes of friends. One is Mitra. No, one is Bandhu. I think the first is Bandhu, which is an acquaintance, someone you know, someone you say hello to on the street, or maybe occasionally hang out with. And then there's Mitra, the friends are an actual friend, like a buddy, someone that we love to hang out with, someone we might confide in. And then there's Suhrit. Hrit means heart, and Su means his heart is inclined toward us. He's our always our well-wisher. He's always pulling for us, always rooting for us. And, oh, by the way, he's the beneficiary of all the sacrifices and austerities that everyone performs. And he's the Lord of all the universes. So if you have a friend like that, who's always looking out for you, what's missing? What's missing? So this is, these are some of the kind of side benefits of Bhakti Yoga, that we actually can become peaceful. If we're able to withdraw ourselves from actually trying to compete with each other for whatever it is, material resources, respect, money, position, power, women, men, fame, whatever it is. If we stop that, if we actually are able to withdraw from that because we see that it's not in our real self-interest, then we can become peaceful. Then we can become actually happy, because happiness doesn't actually mean it doesn't necessarily mean pleasure. Happiness, if we look at it philosophically, happiness means well-being. And if we're actually situated, and this is the goal of all yoga, we see this at the very beginning of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. He said, in the second sutra, he says, the first sutra, he says, now we're going to talk about yoga. And in the second sutra, he says, Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga means stilling all the agitations in the mind, in the heart, in our shukshma sharira, our subtle body. And then what happens? In the third aphorism, he explains, then the seer, this is how he describes the Atman, or the Jiva, the self, then the seer can live in its own situation as pure consciousness. And that consciousness is not only eternal, not only eternally existing, but it's also full with all the knowledge that it needs, and has the potential for unlimited joy, unlimited bliss. So what else is there? I mean, that's the ultimate happiness. And it doesn't require that we give up our families and move into ashrams and live as monks or go live in a cave and meditate 24/7 or in the forest or anything like that. It doesn't require that in the middle of the winter we immerse ourselves in the Ganga, you know, at Rishikesh or someplace like that, or in the summer surround ourselves, in the heat of summer, surround ourselves with fires or anything like that. It doesn't require any kind of self-torture. Just a little self-restraint, maybe a little more self-restraint than ordinary people, but self-restraint's there, right? And we can't go chasing after every man or woman that we see. You know, we can't just walk into a store and pick up a stereo and walk out. People try that, and there's just more trouble to come. So this is actually the formula for a real peaceful life, as Srila Prabhupada prescribes in his preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam, throughout his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and as we see throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, the other Vedic texts. This life centered on satisfying the source of everything, the absolute truth. And when we do that, then we get everything. We get everything we need, and without necessarily having to strive for it at all. The things that we need do come. So anyway, this is just what I was thinking about. I decided not just to talk about the Yoga Sutras. I was thinking yoga studio, maybe we'll talk about yoga. And I guess I did kind of peripherally. But the ultimate yoga for us, in my experience, is Bhakti Yoga. It doesn't exclude the other things necessarily. I have many friends who are full-time Bhakti Yoga practitioners, but who teach yoga, teach Ashtanga Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Yin Yoga, whatever, as a way of making a living. But and many of them are yoga, not just yoga teachers, but they teach aspiring yoga teachers, or they teach accomplished yoga teachers, like you go into the 300-hour or the 500-hour yoga teacher trainings. Many of my friends have owned yoga studios and run these teacher training programs. And I have one friend who had for 25 years, I think, owned a yoga studio in Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is. And her yoga teacher training was, the way she presented it was yoga infused with bhakti, or yoga with heart. So yoga's fine. We're cool with yoga. When I get back to Hawaii, I'm going to start some training in Tai Chi, because I'm an old man, got issues with my body, and one of the physical therapists that I was working with last year teaches at the Veterans Clinic in Honolulu, teaches a Tai Chi class for balance, for, you know, kind of balance better. So I'm fine with that. And I'm even fine with people practicing different kinds of meditation, because I see that that improves their lives as well. My brother and sister are meditators. I have a cousin who's a Buddhist meditator. So those things are okay. And as far as family life and professional life, pursuing of, you know, professional goals, you know, wanting to send your kids to the right schools and all that thing, I have experience with that too. I'm not a lifelong Swami. I'm a relatively new, I've only been a sannyasi for about 12 and a half years. Before that, I was married for 40 years, had 2 daughters, and worked as an editor and as an English professor. So all those things are, you know, they can still be part of our lives. We don't necessarily have to let go of those goals, those intermediate goals for keeping body and soul together. And let's face it, most of us in our jobs, we also want to help make the world a better place. It's not just about getting money. It's not just about getting ahead, climbing the corporate ladder or whatever. Most of us do the things that we do because we think that they would also make the world a better place. Grocery store clerks, they're doing their job because it's something they can do. It pays the bills, but it's part of providing something that people need. Food, some trees, things like that. Okay, so I'll stop now.
The microphone.
Let's see if there's any further discussion before we have a little more kirtan.
Get the microphone. Get.
Comment. It's like etymological. So when you were talking about how we sort of like misunderstand what is happiness, or it can be misunderstood, especially by people who are really focused on things that are temporary. I was thinking about, so what's like the superlative of happiness? Like what are the words that people use that are like the highest happiness? And one word came to mind, euphoria. Right? When you use the word euphoria, it's like, whoa, like that, like people kind of reserve that in their vocabulary arsenal for like really serious big moments. So I looked it up. I thought, well, what does it actually mean? Because we say it, but maybe we're not very staying in fidelity to the Greek. So the Greek actually means so you is good or well, and pherein, which becomes phoros, is to bear. And actually it's referring to properly take medicine. And I thought that was like such a nice connection to bhakti, because we got like so many instructions that but practicing bhakti yoga is like taking medicine, right? Activities in the mode of goodness, they're sometimes bitter at the beginning and they become sweeter and they help us get better and things like that. And so then I thought that's so wonderful that euphoria, the highest happiness, actually means properly taking your medicine, which in this case is like chanting Hare Krishna, practicing bhakti yoga.
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling a little bit of renewed enthusiasm to take my medicine today.
Another superlative for happiness would be ecstasy, right? And ecstasy has something to do with transporting yourself outside of your body. That's a euphoric state as well. And those things are natural consequences of yoga. And there's certainly natural consequences of bhakti yoga. Sometimes we find ourselves when we're engaged in kirtan together. Sankirtan, right? Sankirtan means complete kirtan, or sangha kirtan, we're all together. We're breathing together. When we were having our Chant for Peace program in the park in the city, I suggested that our chanting comes best from our hearts. I remember when I was a boy, especially in high school, I was in the elite choirs in my high school, and also different ensembles. We had a girls ensemble, which had a kind of funny name that I can't remember. Oh, something goofy, very, very 50s or early 60s, choral ears. There was a girls ensemble, and then we had a boys ensemble that was a barbershop quartet. I was a member of the barbershop quartet, obviously not a member of the choraleers. But also there was a mixed ensemble called, and we call ourselves the madrigal singers. And so we sang all kinds of things. And our singing instructor, Miss Hopkins, Louise Hopkins, one of my favorite people in that part of my life, would tell us, we should sing, we should breathe from our diaphragm, not from our lungs. But I was thinking we should breathe from our hearts when we're chanting. We should try to get into our hearts when we chant. And when we do that, we do find ourselves in a euphoric state or an ecstatic state. Sometimes we forget time. When I was in Mayapur last March now, yeah. When I was in Mayapur, I'm still a little disoriented, traveling halfway around the world just a couple of days ago, and then still traveling, and I'll be back in Hawaii on Wednesday. And so one of the more famous kirtan singers in the world, a devotee named Madhava Das, he's from Mauritius. I have seen him chant. I've seen him lead. I once saw him lead a kirtan for 4.5 hours. And the only thing that moves in his body are his hands and his head. And I just don't, especially as an old guy with creaky joints, I don't understand how someone can sit still for 4.5 hours and be cool with that. How someone can sit still for 4.5 hours, not have to get up to use the bathroom. I mean, that's a long time. And not need a drink of water and keep going. He was talking about how he led a kirtan once someplace, and it went until the time early in the morning for Mangalarati. It was several hours long, and he didn't remember any of it. There was no time for him. Now that's what back in my days surfers would call being locked in. But he was, that's a genuine flow state. And so sometimes that happens in a kirtan, that ecstasy or euphoria, those superlative states of happiness. So yeah, thank you for that. That's, especially for an old kind of like word hound like me, that's fun. Anyone else?
Can you use the microphone?
Not me. I know that's usually me. It's like, oh, not me. I'm not going to say anything.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
So
Krishna.
in the West, this term yoga is used very loosely.
Yeah. Oh,
So often yoga is used for a certain kind of lifestyle, a vegetarian diet, or I don't know, like a hip and cool lifestyle, and especially Ashtanga yoga is completely it's separated from the spiritual aspect of yoga.
yeah.
What is the remedy for this?
Oh, well, the remedy for that misunderstanding is actually reading Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which describes the process of Ashtanga yoga, yama, niyama, etc., all the way to samadhi. Those are the 8 limbs, the Ashtanga of yoga. And so he starts out by explaining that yoga means calming all these agitations in the mind and in the heart. And the process for doing that is meditation. And the process of asana is addressed in the Yoga Sutras. Any guesses as to what percentage, in terms of percentage, how much of the Yoga Sutras address asana? Any wild guesses?
Less than 5%.
Less than 5%. Okay, there's one. Anything, anyone else? I mean, that sounds ridiculous. It's yoga after all, right? How much? 90% addresses asana. Anyone else? 50. I hear a 50. Do I hear a 65? Anybody 65, 65, 65? Going once, going twice. 50%. Okay. 1%. Out of the 1,200 words in the Yoga Sutras, 11 or 12 words address asana. And it's important. But why is it important? So we can sit still and meditate for long periods of time and get in touch with our heart and actually get that darshan of the Paramatma. But in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there might be other, kind of ancient yoga instruction that might include more of that. But, when you take a yoga teacher training, the kind of basic textbook is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I always found that an interesting fact. And Patanjali goes through all these things that we have to do. The yamas, the prohibitions, the don'ts, and the niyamas, the things that you must do, and all these different things, in order to attain samadhi. But then he says, you can do all this, or you can do Ishvara Pranidhana, which means taking shelter. It means surrendering to the Supreme Lord. That's also yoga. So yoga is not, as you point out, I mean, what do we have nowadays? I remember, I don't know about nowadays, but I remember a few years ago hearing about laughing yoga. Nothing wrong with laughing. Laughing is a very healthy thing to do. But beer yoga,
That's very popular.
hot yoga is very popular. And yeah, you got hatha yoga and hot yoga. It's not really about just, looking cool in your Lululemons. It's ultimately, it's meant as a spiritual practice. It's meant for actually a kind of union with the absolute truth. And that part is missing, which is why many of our bhakti yogis who also like practicing yoga have figured out a way to make a learning teaching yoga, but they try to infuse it with bhakti. And they don't necessarily lay it on heavy, in their regular sessions, but you'll see in their yoga teacher trainings. I attended one weekend Bhagavad Gita intensive that was taught by Professor Edwin Bryant of Rutgers University, who is also a bhakta. And so, yeah, that misunderstanding is, can be easily taken care of by carefully reading, especially with, if you have the guidance of an experienced practitioner, reading Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And especially like Bryant has, Edwin Bryant, his bhakti name is Advaita Das. And he has a commentary. He has a translation of the Yoga Sutras, and he integrates ancient commentaries. He doesn't have his own commentary, but he integrates the ancient commentaries on the Yoga Sutras, starting with Vyasadeva, and shows how it really is meant to be a spiritual practice. Thank you for that. That's a wonderful point. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question was a follow-up to what you asked earlier. So just like Bhagavad Gita, as it is when Srila Prabhupada presented it, he also condemned the innumerable versions of Bhagavad Gita that others have tried to present, and they were all condemned to be not bringing in the actual message of Bhagavad Gita as it is. So is that the same problem with the yoga system, that they're not trying to teach yoga as it is, sort of thing?
Yeah, that may be. And there are people teaching a more authentic form of yoga, but those people generally, so just like you have the lineage coming from what was his name? Oh, I can't remember his name now. But one of his famous disciples was Bhakti Joyce, and there's some others, and I know some folks who are actually, were actually students of Bhakti Joyce's, and not Krishna Namacharya. Krishna Namacharya. He was an authentic yoga teacher, and he was a Sri Vaishnava. Yeah, Iyengar yoga comes from the same lineage. Yeah, that's also, so that's, that's yoga being taught by people who understand the heart of yoga, because they themselves are strict Vaishnavas. So that's, really, that's the spiritual yoga. So yeah, when we have people like gosh, I can't remember the names of some of them, but my friend in Kansas, Gopi Mata, Devi Dasi, who she had a yoga studio in Lawrence, Kansas. She's still teaching yoga, but she doesn't manage the yoga studio anymore, because she's also not a kid anymore. She's one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and most of us are, at least the youngest of us are like in the late 50s. Those are people who were in our gurukulas in the 70s. So she's basically she's retired, but she's still teaching. She teaches at someone else's studio in a nearby town. It's even closer than Lawrence. So yeah, we want, if somehow or other the real spiritual essence of yoga could be revived by people from, the Iyengar tradition, Krishna Namacharya's tradition, then even more people might be attracted. Who knows? Is there anything else? Yes, please. Or you may have to project.
Yeah.
Use the microphone.
Oh, there we go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was wondering, is peace also considered like a form of happiness?
Oh, yeah, because it's well-being, and it's something that Krishna advocates for in the Bhagavad Gita, as we see at the end of the 5th chapter. He says, "This is shanti that we can attain peace by this understanding, this focus on the absolute truth as the center of our lives." And elsewhere, when he talks about peace, he says, how can there be any happiness without peace? So Krishna's, although the Bhagavad Gita was spoken on a battlefield, it was advocating that Arjuna should participate in this great war that was just about to take place. Still, Krishna's teaching peace in the Bhagavad Gita. Real peace means union with our source, union with the absolute, rather than being separate from our source, separated from our source, which is kind of our situation now. Anything else? Yes.
Use the microphone.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhu. My question is a bit different than the others. I want to know, like your most beautiful memory with the Prabhupada.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, with your experience when you were in person was meeting with him, or like
Well,
around him, or that way.
there are two things that are two encounters with Srila Prabhupada that are the strongest in my memory. And one is my first time meeting Srila Prabhupada in person. He visited Honolulu just for a day. He only stayed overnight. This was in August of 1970. He had previously spent several weeks in Hawaii in 1969. But I hadn't met the devotees yet. I met the devotees about two months after that. But when he came in 1970, this is a little personal and a little difficult to express. But when I first started studying Bhagavad Gita, even when I first moved into the temple in Honolulu, early in 1970, I didn't see myself as a devotee. I actually saw myself as sort of bhakti curious. Bhakti impressed, maybe, but not committed. I thought, okay, I'll find out what bhakti is, and then I'll share it with my friends as something cool. But as I was practicing throughout the spring and summer of 1970, I found myself becoming more and more committed, and it started with reading that sentence that I mentioned. And when I first lived in the temple, when I referred to Srila Prabhupada, I would refer to him when I was speaking with the other devotees as your spiritual master. At first, I didn't even see him as my own spiritual master. I hadn't made that commitment in my heart. That came gradually throughout the year. And when he came through the gate at the airport, and this was a 747 coming from Los Angeles. He spent a day in Honolulu and then flew to Japan for a little bit, and then to India. And those his activities in India at that time are recounted by some of his early followers like Shyama and Yamuna and Giriraj Swami. He has his book, Dancing White Elephants, that tells about Srila Prabhupada's return to India in the late summer, early fall of 1970. But when so they came in on 747, and he came with 4 sannyasis and a Grihastha disciple, who later became Tamal Krishna Goswami. And they were the last ones off the plane. And there were a group of us in the airport. You could do that back then. You could actually meet people at the gate. You could see people off at the gate. So we had a kirtan party of maybe 45 or 50 devotees going in the airport, and the anticipation built as more and more people got off the plane. And when I saw Srila Prabhupada, my heart kind of leapt out of my chest. There was a kind of recognition that I didn't expect this. I honestly didn't expect to feel, almost ecstatic, almost an out-of-body experience. And then later we had a little reception for him in part of the airport. And each of us had a lei or garland to offer to him. And every time I stepped forward to offer Srila Prabhupada mine, someone else was also kind of there. So I just held back. If you get to know me, you'll know that I'm actually a very introverted, shy person. So it's not hard for that to make that happen. And so I just kind of deferred, and I ended up being the last of the devotees to offer a lei to Srila Prabhupada. And when I got down on the floor to offer my obeisances, I was so overwhelmed with emotion, I couldn't say the prayers. I was just lying on the floor sobbing. And I was lying on the floor sobbing for probably an embarrassingly long time. And then later that evening, he gave this wonderful lecture that was kind of apparently focused on Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'm kind of inferring that from some of the points that he made that I can remember. But in the middle of the talk, we had just finished building a Vyasa-san. I mean, literally just about 20 minutes before. The ladies were just finishing with the upholstery, tacking the upholstery onto the Vyasa-san about 20 minutes before Srila Prabhupada arrived at the temple. And we didn't have an umbrella over it, but we had one of these umbrellas that we used to rig up back then. You know, you'd buy an umbrella at Long's drugstore and you put gold lame on the inside and red velvet on the outside. And you've got like a string of, you know, plastic pearls on the ribs and some gold fringe hanging around. And one of the and the Vyasasan was built in a bay window opposite where the altar was in that room, in the home that we were using as the temple at the time. And one of the brahmacharis, because we hadn't had time to build an umbrella into the Vyasasan, was kneeling on the shelf of the bay in the bay window that the Vyasasan was situated on, holding that umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head. And at some point in his talk, Srila Prabhupada stopped. He looked up at the umbrella. He looked at the boy. He looked up at the umbrella again, and then he said, "I don't think it will rain in here." Which is his way of excusing the boy. You can take it easy on your knees. And then the other very strong impression I have was a private meeting that my wife and a friend of mine and I had with Srila Prabhupada in December of 1973. And the overwhelming, well, the big impression that Srila Prabhupada gave was his care for us. The meeting was mainly supposed to be about a situation that had happened in Hawaii that resulted in all the temples in the islands being closed down and the devotees being left to fend for themselves. But Srila Prabhupada's first concern wasn't with what happened to the big leaders, you know, how are we going to get things going again? Or his first concern was how each of us was doing. So he asked each of us several very personal questions about our practice and our living situation, our association, to make sure that we were okay. And his concern was also demonstrated in the fact that he cleared his calendar that morning. And he asked all the big shots to leave the room. And he asked them, please close the door behind you. He wanted to create a safe space so that we could actually share our hearts with him in confidence. And so it was just quite a wonderful meeting. And, you know, I've never since that day had one moment's doubt in Srila Prabhupada's love for me and protection for me and all of those who take shelter of him and his followers. So we have a good example of that kind of shelter here in the Bay Area in my friend Vaisheshika Prabhu. As I was listening, and this is a thought that I've had before, but it came to me very strongly this morning when he was giving his talk. I was sitting there thinking, Aisha's the real deal. He's a genuine disciple. He's a genuine teacher. The devotees who have his guidance are very fortunate. So Srila Prabhupada's shelter is there. His love and his shelter is there for everyone who will accept it. And it's something that it couldn't be doubted by anyone who has any experience. If it's okay, what do we have? Another 10, 12 minutes? We could do a...
Yeah, so we can do generally we do the Puspanjali and Kirtan. We can start Kirtan and people will offer the...
Oh, okay. What kind of kirtan? I was just going to check.
Nursing prayer and then Hare Krishna.
A little more Hare Krishna. Okay, so yeah, we can do that. And I'll get to play
Kirtan, so 8:30.
squeeze box. And 8:30 will be finished.
You can put that in.
Oh, yeah, that would be probably. Yeah, I can sit on the floor, but then I have to ask everyone to look away when I try to get out.
We should move a little further. We should move a little further away.
Pardon?
This one will go further from the altar. So they
Oh.
can do their.
No, that's okay, you don't need to move.
Oh, it's okay? It's okay.
Whatever you all say. Someone has used this harmonium to learn it. When I give, basic instruction in harmonium to people, especially people who've never played a keyboard instrument, I'll put the stickers on it as well. First, never found the right stickers in music, and just let go and feel it on. But, yeah, so I'm happy to see this is a well-loved harmonium.
Fine.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama.
Krishna, Krishna. Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Jai Vishnupat Raman Se Pariprajacharya Astottra Vachana Bhakti Vedanta Jagat Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Nitya Lila Pravishwa Astottra Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Ananta Kori Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Naman Shri Haridas Thakur Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु आनंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम मथुरा धाम की श्री श्री नवदीप मायपुर धाम की श्री श्री जगन्नाथपुरी पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र धाम की गंगामयी जमुना माई की भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की हरिनाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की ISKCON ट्रांसजेंडर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की योग पीठी धर्मस्थान की समवेत भक्त वृंद की all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So we'd like to extend our deepest gratitude and thanks to His Holiness Abhay Asrama Swami Maharaj. Please give a big round of applause. So no Maharaj in his old age, nevertheless, he has given his valuable wisdom. Haribol, Haribol, stop it, please. So we'd like to again thank Maharaj, and we'll also pray that Maharaj again predicts whenever he comes next to this area, so that we can get more association. Last but not the least, also we have prasadam cooked today by Kailash Prabhu and his wife, and Prabhu Sri Mataji. Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much. And one important announcement: next week is we are celebrating our Pushpa Abhishek on Flower Holi. So we'll immerse the Lord. Anybody attended the last Pushpa Abhishek? Who had attended? Yes. So it will be little similar, but we'll have more Holi because it is the Holi is on 13th February, not February, March. It will be celebrated at Temple, ISB, as well as in Berkeley. So please visit ISB Temple, morning and evening, both the program, even if it is a weekdays, but Thursday. And also we'll be celebrating here on Saturday evening. And we'll be sending out the flyers, and Suresh Prabhu made a very beautiful video. I'll be posting it tonight. So please keep the date same. It will be little earlier. If those who wanted to volunteer for cooking or volunteer for bringing flowers, we are celebrating with 180 flower types. So if you have anything in your garden or anything you want to bring, that's the day you can bring a bouquet or different kinds of flowers to the Lord. Okay? Or if you want to get a bowl of cookies or any snacks, you're most welcome to get it. A special feast will be offered, and also a flower holi will be celebrated on Saturday, 6:30 p.m. So that's all. So we'll head towards prasadam. So please chant with me. Mahaprasade Govinde.
Mahaprasade Govinde.
Namo Brahmane Vaishnave.
Namo Brahmane Vaishnave.
Sarva Punya Vatam Rajan.
Sarva Punya Vatam Rajan.
Vishwasneva Jayate.
Vishwasneva
Sarira Vidyaja.
Sarira Vidyaja.
Jodendriya Tahika.
Jodendriya Tahika.
Jive Phele Visaya Sagare. Bhakti Rohamaya Sudurmati Sakajita Karna Sansari Krishna Vardayamaya Parivari Jivajaya सब प्रसादन नदी लो भाई श्री अन्नामृत पाओ श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गुण गाओ प्रेमिला को श्री चैतन्य निताई जय माई जनिताई जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्री जगन्नाथ महाप्रसादम की प्रभुपाद की हरे कृष्णा. So prasadam will be served outside. Please be seated. Don't bring any prasadam inside. And kids will be cleaning this room. So thank you again and have prasadam. Hare Bo. We'll end this broadcasting now. Hare Krishna.